first reference material we have when it comes to cannabis is in the form of the Chinese Materia Medica, allegedly written by Shen Nung in 2800 BCE. The earliest surviving copy of this book dates back to around 50 BCE. Shen Nung is a legendary figure in Chinese culture, part of a group of three kings called the Celestial Emperors. Half emperor, half deity, he is said to have ruled over China long before written history, inventing irrigation, agriculture, the axe, the hoe, the plow, acupuncture, and traditional Chinese medicine in the process. He is often depicted draped in a garment of leaves, and often chewing on their stems to experiment with their effects on the human body. Shen Nung was essentially the first pharmacologist. In compiling the classic of herbal medicine, Shen Nung discovered the medicinal properties of cannabis, saying it was good for gout, rheumatism, malaria, absent-mindedness, as well as about 100 other things. Prior to this, the plant, which the Chinese called ma, had been used for many centuries for its fiber, in producing cloth, paper, rope, and even in the production of pottery. As the Chinese continued to explore cannabis's benefits, they found it effective in the treatment of other ailments, like vomiting and infections. It is generally believed to have been used in moxibustion practice in acupuncture, being replaced in modern times with mugwort. Around 200 AD, a physician named Hua Tuo became the first person to use anesthesia in surgery, nearly 1600 years before its discovery in the West. And while Hua Tuo's formula for anesthesia has not survived into modern times, its name, Ma Fai Zan, translates approximately to cannabis boiling powder, and is widely accepted to have had cannabis as a component, with other candidates such as gypsum weed and opium proposed to be either in addition to or instead of marijuana. Cannabis was one of the 50 fundamental herbs in the traditional Chinese medicine toolkit. In modern times, with the questionable legality of its use, reference to ma in recent translations of the Chinese medical textbooks only make reference to non-psychoactive hemp seeds. But in antiquity, the Chinese were not shy about singing cannabis's praise. Confucius compiled the Book of Odes and the Canon of Rites, detailing poetry, song, and the religious ritual practices of the Chinese shamanism of his contemporaries and ancestors. Ma is mentioned numerous times throughout each of these collections. But perhaps more interesting is its frequent association with the burial ceremony during this time period. Cannabis has been found both burned and unburned, seed, bud, and everything in between, with burned seeds having been found in kurgan burial mounds in Siberia and China, dating back to around 3000 BC, and nearly 2 pounds of bud being discovered in a grave in what is believed to be the royal chamber in China's Xinjiang region. But through a network of trade routes, weed quickly found its way across the region, intersecting numerous cultures in the process. Coming up, we'll explore weed spread throughout the East and its importance in the foundation of Indian culture. As marijuana's popularity as a dietary staple, a medicine, and even the very myth in which until it was made Peru. China came to be known as the land of hemp and mulberry. Mulberries are high in protein, iron, vitamins, and minerals, just like cannabis. So it's no wonder that the two were both revered in this similar way. While the earliest recorded history of cannabis comes from China, it is known to have been widely distributed in fertile soil along the rivers of the ancient world. Along the banks of these great rivers, like the Yellow River in China, the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, the Indus in India, and perhaps even the Nile in Egypt, civilization began to sprout up as well. And while it's unclear how exactly this knowledge of cannabis's medicinal and psychoactive properties spread, some evidence points to nomadic tribes emerging from the steppes of Central Asia, such as the Yamnaya, who also may have been responsible for the Kurgan burial mounds found throughout the region. Historians believe that these tribal groups of the Caucasus region helped to advance trade across Asia and Europe well before the Silk Road, spreading the wheel, horse domestication, and many other technologies of the time. Some subset of these tribes, who called themselves the Aryans, migrated from the north into what is now India, eventually merging with the people who had already inhabited the region, developing the prototypical Indo-Aryan language and culture in the process. From this culture, Indian and Iranian cultures, among many others, would ultimately be born. This protoculture was also responsible for the invention of one of the earliest written languages, Sanskrit. Some of the earliest Sanskrit texts, the Vedas, meaning knowledge, are still in existence today. These texts are the basis of our knowledge of ancient Indian history, as well as spirituality, being important religious texts for both Zoroastrian and Hindu faiths. Cannabis, or bhang, as it is called in India, is mentioned as one of 5 sacred plants in the 4th Veda. The Hindu god Shiva is sometimes referred to as Lord of the Bhang. There are several legends associating Shiva with cannabis, from him making it of his own flesh to help purify the Amrita, or elixir of life, to it being churned up from a sea of milk, along with the sacred cow and the moon by Shiva himself. One such legend states that Shiva, in the midst of an argument with his family, escaped to the mountains. As he continued to climb, he became tired from his journey in the sun's hot rays. He fell asleep beneath the plant. When he awoke, he became aware of the fragrant smell of the plant and decided to taste its leaves. Rejuvenated, Shiva made this ganja his favorite food, bringing it back to humanity, along with the art of yoga, a sort of instruction manual in the practice of using this sacred herb correctly. As a result, devotees of Shiva still consume bhang, ganja, and charas, 3 traditional preparations of cannabis, to this day. It is most commonly consumed in a drink known as bhang lassi, which is similar to the mango lassi popularized in the West, with bhang taking place of mango. This drink is especially used on holidays such as Holi and Shivratri, the festival of Shiva. Even in regions where it is illegal, an exception is made during these particular celebrations. The sadhus, yogic holy men, and devotees of Shiva, smoke it in the form of ganja and charas on a daily basis, saying it brings them closer to Shiva. But as we will see, Hinduism isn't the only Indo-Aryan religious tradition to incorporate cannabis into its culture. Coming up, we'll explore marijuana's place in Buddhism, Sikhism, and the Zoroastrian faith. The Vedic religious tradition, proto-religion of the Indo-Aryan people, served as the origin for both Zoroastrianism and Hinduism, with Hinduism developing in the Indian subcontinent and the Zoroastrian faith flourishing in Iran. The Persian prophet, Zoroaster, is believed to be the first to make mention of cannabis as a sacrament. In the Zend Avesta, a collection of important religious texts in Zoroastrianism, hemp appears first in a list of over 10,000 medicinal plants. It was considered the chief religious sacrament of the priest class and was generally unavailable to the common people. This priestly class would consume bhang, sometimes referred to as banga or mang, mixed with wine, after which it is said that their bodies rested while their minds went on a spiritual journey. In fact, many of our modern conceptual imagery of heaven and hell comes from Zoroastrian priest Ardak Bharat, who was known to go on journeys to these realms through the use of bhang. Zoroaster's own wife, dissatisfied with his secondary shamanic experience, prayed to the Supreme Being that he give her his good narcotic, ganja. Back in India, a new religion was developing based on the teachings of a sage named Siddhartha Gautama. According to legend, Gautama, the Buddha, subsisted on a diet of cannabis for 6 years before his revelations and ascent to Buddhahood. As he sat beneath the Bodhi tree for 40 days and 40 nights, he consumed only a single hemp seed per day. And while most sects of Buddhism have largely forgotten or ignored bhang's important place in the life of the Buddha, a spiritual movement called Tantra sprung up in the 6th century, weaving Hindu and Buddhist beliefs into a new esoteric philosophy in which bhang played a preeminent role. In the Mahanirvana Tantra, bhang is said to assist in the Great Liberation. A prayer is contained in this sacred religious text that is supposed to accompany consumption of bhang. When translated, it reads, "May this cannabis be a blessing to my heart." The Mahanirvana also states that bhang is consumed in order to liberate oneself, and that those who do, dominating their mental faculties and following the yoga or law of Shiva, are to be likened to immortals on earth. By the Middle Ages, bhang became so popular, in fact, that it was often consumed before battle, much in the way that alcohol was in the West. They believed that the consumption of bhang would make one's enemies feel possessed by spirits. A later religious tradition, Sikhism, which finds its roots in Tantra, forbids all drugs and alcohol, with bhang being the only exception. They call it Sudlidan, meaning giver of peace. And when Sikh's founder was presented with bhang by the Mughal king Babur, he was so delighted as to offer his blessing for Babur to have his kingdom for 7 generations. This Sudlidan was especially popular with a group of Sikh warriors known as the Nihals, who consume it to this day. And while colonialism has largely wiped out psychotropic plants the world over, the Sikhs received special permission from the British imperialists to continue using Sudlidan. In the late 1800s, when opium and other drugs of concern were made illegal in British colonies, a commission was set up who created a report on the importance of cannabis in Indian culture. It concludes that suppressing the use of bhang would be unjustifiable due to its ancient religious use among Hindus and the view that it was harmless when used in moderation. When we return, we'll explore the spread of cannabis into the ancient Western world. The Aryan tribes that settled in Iran went on to form the Persian Empire, whose rule reached from the borders of India all the way to land Egypt by 500 BC. But some suggest the Egyptians had knowledge of cannabis nearly 1,500 years before that. The oldest complete medical text, the Ebers Papyrus, as well as other writings of the time, contain reference to a plant, Shemshem-2, which was created by the sun god Ra and used in ceremonies honoring the dead. It is believed by many to be none other than marijuana. Shemshem-2, used medicinally, was often combined with honey and used in topical medical preparations for inflammation. Whether this interpretation of Shemshem-2's identity is correct or not, there is other evidence indicative of ancient Egyptian knowledge of cannabis. For example, the goddess Sheshat is almost universally depicted with a 7-pointed symbol, often resembling the 7-pointed marijuana above her head. Similarly, hemp fibers have been discovered in the tomb of Akhenaten, with hemp pollen found inside of the mummy of Ramesses II, who died nearly 700 years before the Persian conquest of Egypt. Both of these samples have undergone chemical analysis and confirmed to be weed. There are also numerous hieroglyphics showing what appear to be smoking pipes or ceremonial incense burners. And while these have been attributed by some to represent ceremonial use of the blue lotus flower, which itself is psychoactive, most researchers agree that blue lotus was steeped in wine as opposed to being smoked. But while evidence of ancient Egyptian knowledge of marijuana's psychoactive properties is mostly circumstantial, there is an unmistakable written record by their Greek counterparts. In fact, the word cannabis comes from an ancient Greek translation of a Scythian word. It is generally believed that hemp, hanep in Old English, comes from the same Scythian source. But the Grecian relationship with cannabis is not purely etymological. The Greek historian Herodotus was the first person to make any mention of cannabis in Western literature. He wrote extensively on the Scythian people, a nomadic tribe that he had encountered